Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and the Yukon. Trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the pink symbol ABN-AF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Danielle Park, editor of the popular blog Juggling Dynamite and president of Venable Park Investment Council Incorporated. Welcome back to the show, Danielle.
Hello, Jim.
It's a very changing world we're living in. You're talking about Gwynne Dyer, whose series I remember on television about the armed forces, where really it seemed you're not volunteering to kill if you sign up for the Army, you're volunteering to die. Was the biggest message that I got from that. But he also had a message about the future, and apparently he spoke at your son's school.
Yeah, so I went over to hear him yesterday. I've heard him speak before, and he is, very knowledgeable about the history of humanity and especially military stuff. And it was basically to a group of young people who are all sort of, in grade 11, 12, trying to get into universities and colleges and plan their career. And on the one hand, the message was very kind of sobering and almost haunting for them, and it was that, in 10 years' time, roughly 50% of the current jobs that people have will be replaced by automation or robots in some way. But also, what I like to add to that when I'm talking to young people is there are other ideas coming down the pipe as we evolve as a humanity. So one of these is the idea of the guaranteed income supplement, which some countries are trying out, where every person in the nation is given a stipend from the government every month to cover overhead. Now, a lot of people's first reaction to that is, that's outrageous. You're paying people to do nothing. That's going to, make the population lazy. But in reality, the fact is that you cannot have a society where half the people are unemployed, and that's where we're headed. Not only from a demographic perspective, which is, the fact that we have this inverted pyramid right now of too many old people and too few young people in productive careers, contributing to tax and paying for all the benefits that the old folks are trying to take out. So you've got that demographic problem, but you've also got, this automation problem that's coming in and really taking so many of the traditional ways that people made income. So the caveat that goes with that, and Mr. Dyer actually didn't add this part, is that we have to start taxing the automation, right? So this is an idea that Bill Gates was speaking about last month, but several people have brought it up. If we're replacing humans with machines, then we still need revenue to maintain the social fabric, the infrastructure, the security, the medical system, all this stuff. So I think we really have to open our minds to this whole new world where traditional ideas of how one is paid or how one earns a living are in flux. And we have to be open to the idea that we have to start, first of all, one of the things I've been talking about for some time is the fact that corporations have really got away with incredible profit margins in the past 20 years, increasingly so, partly because of the shift of the world to debt-based consumption, where they are able to consume more than they actually have the money for. So you've seen the whole world go kind of into the ditch on debt, and that really boosted consumption for corporate products and profits. But also we have had this since 1982, the ability of corporations to buy back their own shares. The SEC and regulators who traditionally saw that as market manipulation, and technically speaking, it is market manipulation, but they just stopped really enforcing that as a infringement in around 1982. And since then, we've had an epidemic, of course, of companies not investing, build infrastructure, R&D, all these important things, but rather to buy their own shares, financial engineering. And these have all boosted their profits as they've been laying people off in droves, and that's really starting to pick up again. So this whole movement around the world of Brexit and the Trump phenomenon and what we're seeing, the Dutch elections are coming up and then the French elections after that, these nationalist movements are legitimately born of a pressure in the working population of this rising underemployment and the exodus of jobs to machines. So these are all actually happening. There's no point in pretending they're not. So you have to get very practical about what you do about it. Now, Mr. Trump and others who are being elected promise they're going to bring jobs back through, government meddling, intervention, suppressing of what technologies are going to be given the green light in terms of, picking winners and losers. This is all a disaster, right? Because they won't bring the jobs back. They'll just bring more automation and more robots. So what we have to do is really think of it in a whole new way. So again, back to this idea of the minimum income supplement. If everyone is getting that, that will help to solve your problem of all the undersaved boomers today too, who have not, put away enough for the rainy day because of all the nonsense they've been told about capital markets over the past 20 years as we got to these bubble financial conditions which are going to implode and remove capital again. So then they're going to find out, hey, they don't have enough savings, they need to work longer, but there's less jobs. You've got all these competing young people. So really I do think this type of a model is going to spread and it'll be probably a great help at a time when pensions are facing, massive deficits. I don't know if you caught, Jim, there was more news this week. We've talked in the past about the Dallas police and firefighters pension that was, quickly running out of money, was down below half of its funding requirements to pay out. People were starting to panic and trying to take out lump sums, and of course that just speeds the demise of the fund itself. But that's just one example. So there's many more, thousands of people who are expecting to get defined benefit pensions out of various, Teamsters organizations, many trades, many working people all over America and in other countries who have, sort of been sold this bill of goods that they've paid in enough over the years that they were going to make X and therefore they were going to get this amount of income for life. Well, the gig is up because the holes are big and they can't fill them and there's not enough contributors now or capital available. So here we go back to this same theme I was touched on, which is corporate profitability, which has been off the charts and all in one direction for many years, higher, is now going to have to top up or cost share in rebuilding the coffers here. Otherwise, what happens is it all shifts on to the taxpayer. We get more and more debt, more and more requirement for assistance on social programs, all while there's less taxation coming into the system. And this isn't a new phenomenon, by the way. This falling tax revenue thing, Mr. Trump says that he's going to cut taxes further. But the truth is taxes have already been falling in terms of revenues to the government in the United States since 2012. And that's largely to do with this massive underemployment that is bubbling underneath the surface, because of the low participation rate. So you have corporations using loopholes, you have falling demand in the world and falling revenue, and then you've got all these people needing benefits. So we really have to recalibrate the system. And I understand people who are terrified about, we don't want to incent people to do nothing. But I would submit that we've already got a program that is incenting a lot of people to the wrong behaviors, and they're very unproductive. A lot of speculative behavior, a lot of, people looking to try and increase their income rather than thinking of practical things like, lowering your expenses or becoming more efficient or maybe renting out your basement or getting part-time work or figuring out some kind of business thing you can add to collect some income on the side while you're, either working, semi-retired or even in retirement or working longer than you planned. These are all things that people need to get used to in this new environment. And Instead, many are turning to speculative behaviors like that are being counseled to them from the financial sales side. And this is all destructive. You just have to look at, we've had trillions and trillions of dollars pumped into the global financial system over the past 8 years since the Great Recession. We've had record highs in valuations. We're now, at some of the highest median stock valuations ever in human history, worse than the tech bubble peak. And yet, we still have this tsunami of pension busts spreading across and under savings in most households in all across the world. So clearly this bubble mentality of trying to inflate at all costs is not solving the problem. It's making the whole system that much more weak, and the revelation is going to hit that much later in these people's lives that they don't have the savings that they thought was enough or that they thought they had. So again, it's a time to really, I think that the next big meltdown is going to reveal all these truths again, and we're going to have an opportunity to rethink how we distribute income in this society.
We'll have more with Danielle Park right after the break.
I'm Bill McWilliam, president of Cascadero Copper, CCD on the TSX Venture Exchange. Cesium is one of the world's rarest metals with a growing industrial demand. Drilling is underway on our Tehran property in Argentina to prove up a cesium resource. Cascadero's patent-pending leach process has the potential to make Cascadero the lowest cost supplier of cesium in the world. Visit our website, cascadero.com, or phone us at 604-924-5504.
I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese, Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Danielle Park. Danielle, Bernie Sanders has now reacted to Donald Trump's speech before Congress. What did he have to say about it?
Oh, well, I think Mr. Sanders is a very rational, clear-minded person when he speaks about many of the issues that are, obviously should be top of mind and top of focus in terms of policy attention by governments all around the world. And, he just pointed out that you could sort of glean more from the Trump speech to Congress this week, more from what he didn't mention than from the sort of talking points that he tossed out, like as if they were sort of like campaign promises that he did toss out but didn't really put any meat on the bone. And he didn't touch on all the really significant things, like the biggest, issue, which we were just touching on in the first segment, is the underfunding and the undersavings in the population, underemployment, undersaving, underfunding. That means that the social safety net as it currently stands is running out of money at a voracious pace. And so, of course, the, quote, entitlements, which all of the older generation are banking on to pay them into their sunset years, are not properly funded. And the holes are going to become more and more evident over the next 20 years and completely take all government revenue, I think it's by 2030, all revenue is going to be needed for entitlements, not for paying debt, not for paying, investing in infrastructure, not for all the other, military, all that stuff that people want, funding for, is going to be impossible if we don't totally retrofit or rejig the social safety net. So that's the first thing. No comment whatsoever. The bulk of the expenditures of the government are actually about those programs, and nothing was touched on there. His idea is tax cuts and increased military spending. Neither of those are going to have the effect that we need, which is how to increase income in the pockets of the majority in the society, not just the 0.1% at the top. And P.S., when you cut taxes for the 0.1%, they don't typically spend more anyway. So you don't get a multiplier effect. You get maybe a little more speculation here and there on various assets to drive up prices that are already too high to areas which make no sense at all. So it really is not a stimulative program. And as I say, tax revenues have already been falling, and the deficits have been widening, and the debt has been building. So that's why the U.S. is at $20 trillion of debt and growing before we even get these supposed tax cuts. So really, he also didn't touch at all on the issues of climate, of course. And, it's becoming increasingly embarrassing that anyone in the modern age would assert that climate change is not a real factor. I mean, you have, many public health people coming forward talking about never mind the risk to, the natural world and, the biosphere, talk about the impact that we're finding in human beings already right now. And, things like toxins in our environment, in our water and air systems, 1 in 2 Americans men is expected to get cancer, and 1 in 3 American women is expected to get cancer. That's just already. We have an epidemic of cancer and other diseases, and that's directly related in many cases to the way in which we're managing our resources, to what fuels and foods we're using, and how we're, how we're treating our water and our other resources. So, that's all happening right now, and he likens it in the clip that I put on from the health expert Gary Cohen. He was talking about, the rates of asthma and infectious disease and water contamination and all this that's already here. Fracking is polluting all sorts of water as they create energy in the U.S. from the old fossil fuel style approach. That's just one example, but basically he was, pointing out that this is like the tobacco industry in the 50s. They studied for many years. They knew very well their product was toxic and was going to cause great financial harm, health harm, but that equates to financial harm to the people and the society that's trying to pay for the medical costs. And the loss of productivity of people when they succumb to the various ailments that flow from that, from consuming tobacco products. And for a long time, the companies themselves, they were selling the stuff. They were trying to run propaganda, contra-propaganda campaigns to, muddy the waters, make it unclear whether the science was correct, that it was, causing these health problems. And they spent a fortune trying to resist the public from appreciating and realizing how dangerous this stuff was. And then what followed, of course, was a tsunami of lawsuits. They went after the tobacco companies, and they sued them for knowingly, selling the stuff and covering up the science that proved the harm of what they were doing. And it's very similar to what I think is going to happen in this next era with the fossil fuel industry. The Exxons, the Koch brothers, all this have known for years and years and years, decades, that their product was causing toxicity and problems in the environment. And, not only did they keep selling the product, but they literally spent millions trying to keep that news from the public and muddy the whole understanding of how that was harming us. So I think it's a good job they have deep pockets, frankly, because the lawyers and the lawsuits are starting already now. And this is, this is not about esoteric issues with whether our climate is warmer or not somewhere. This is about the direct health impacts that are already evident. And so, I think that's another thing that, of course, Mr. Trump and his company they're just doing the classic, we deny that's a problem, therefore we're not going to talk about why we need to do anything about that. And I think that's going to be a fatal flaw because, as I say, the evidence, the science, it continues to mount, and people need money in the healthcare system. They need money to help, with all this illness that's prevalent. And they follow the money. They're going to look for where the money is, and in this day and age, it's increasingly in corporations because so few people have much resources other than a notional value in their house, for example. Governments have deficits and debts as far as the eye can see, and corporations have really made off like bandits in the last 20 years. So I think now, we're going to see this mean reversion where people come after them for, either increased taxation, for taxing robots, for lawsuits, for harm suffered, for, all that stuff. And we'll see the pendulum swing back again.
We'll have more with Danielle Park right after this.
GEM International is a new diamond explorer in the richest diamond producing country in Africa, located next to the fourth largest producing diamond mine in the world. International Spotlight is on an 1109 carat diamond recently discovered in Africa by a fellow Canadian junior with a proven operator and finance team. GEM International trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol GI. Visit us at gemdiamondmining.com.
Keep informed. Receive our weekly recap of thought-provoking articles, podcasts, and radio delivered to your inbox for free. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage, HowStreet.com. Welcome back. We're speaking with Danielle Park. Danielle, a survey has been done about Canadian savings habits. What kind of habits do we have?
Well, unfortunately, not very good. There was actually 3 different surveys just done in the past few months. One found that 2/3 of Canadians believe the economy and their own financial system has stagnated or worsened over the past 5 years, which I think, again, on paper, you would say, well, we've been in an economic recovery. It's been more than 8 years since the last recession. We're at close to full employment in North America of the people who say they're looking for work. So we should be in good shape, but we're not in good shape because people have whatever income they have had, it's been sort of all increasingly channeled towards just paying the shelter costs over their head because we've had this influx of speculative capital and lax lending and poor foreign investment rules so that the property prices have been bid up to such an extent around the world that now, a great deal of income and resources are directed just to keeping a roof over one's head. So they have deficits of savings everywhere else. And that makes a person, again, it doesn't make you feel any more wealthy to have the same roof over your head today that it was, that was half the price 5 years ago. And that's literally the reality. In many communities, housing has nearly doubled in the last 5 years, the cost of housing, and rents have gone up considerably in many cities as well. So, a person doesn't feel more wealthy just because you tell them that their shelter's worth twice as much. If they're still just trying to provide the shelter and they're having to spend a lot to maintain it, they don't have any net extra cash flow. So that makes perfect sense to me. Also, 42% of Canadians rank money as their greatest stress. That was another survey done on behalf of the Financial Planning Standards Council, and they say they have a lot of regret about financial decisions and it's causing them to lose sleep. And then a lot of people report they do see a national retirement crisis going on in the country. And again, I think that's all you think about it, we've got, the lowest interest rates we've seen in most of our lifetime, just at a time when people are, trying to build up savings and have the highest shelter costs they've had in a long time. And that's sort of counterintuitive because you think, well, rates are so low, how could their housing costs be so high? But that is the direct other side of that coin of low rates and speculation that's driven prices up by twice as much as they were 5 years ago. So obviously, we haven't benefited from low rates. We've actually just taken on more obligation and more payments. So it's just causing a lot of financial stress. And this is, again, all before we even get into the next recession, bear market, which is well overdue. There's just no plan. People have no plan today for what happens when the next, downturn period hits, which is inevitable, which is due to happen very likely within the next 4 years, maybe, within the next first couple of years of Trump's term, perhaps, in the States. And you've got a central banks that have no ammunition left. You've got the most indebted governments, households, and corporations you've had in pretty much ever in history, all layered over this demographic of aging people who are increasingly suffering from disease thanks to toxicity in our environment. So those things are, they're very sobering things, and I think people are suffering a lot of anxiety. Young people certainly are, as they look out, trying to navigate where their future was going to be in the midst of all this. And I think, Mr. Sanders' clip is excellent. I urge anybody that's interested to have a look, watch through it, because he really goes through these issues that actually, all the ones we've been talking about today, that matter to real life people, and say, okay, here's what we can do, here's what we can do, here's what we can do, but P.S., this administration and most of them in most countries, and these ones that are all talking about, foreigners taking our jobs as if that's this straw man that everyone's mad at, but that's really not what's ailing us. And if we take the time to look at what's ailing us, we can actually find solutions to turn it around that would really make a substantive difference. So there is lots of good news. It's just that we really are going to have to see, I guess, a intensifying pressure in the population for pragmatic solutions. And all this idea about investing more money in military power or in more pipelines for antiquated technology like fossil fuels is in the end going to be more sunk costs, wasted money, sunk costs in the wrong direction. So we have to get people to say, this is not the time to mince words and be polite and say, well, you're entitled to your beliefs. This is a time where you have to look at dollars and cents, what is really making the public less healthy and prosperous today. And it's a hollowing out that's been going on for 20 years, and now we need to really work on how to reverse many of those trends and be smarter with our resources.
Danielle, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Hey, thank you, Jim. My
guest has been Danielle Park, editor of the popular blog Juggling Dynamite. You're listening to HowStreet.com radio. Find us on Twitter at Talk Digital Net. Our popular YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. You can forward questions to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.